Hello, I'm very glad to interview for you. Yeah, so the first question is for first part is for background. So first question is, could you introduce yourself to me?
Sure. I'm DC Scarpelli. I'm the visual design lead for WNM. You want my education? I have an undergraduate degree in playwriting from Yale University, and I have another bachelor's from the Academy of Art University.
Oh, cool. So, what kind of hobby do you have after school or after company?
I don't have too many hobbies. Most of what I do is work. So I design freelance, and I'm an actor and director. So that really takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what kind of groups meeting have you attended that you like?
In person,
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of meetings. Yeah, particularly group meetings. I find that if you're having a group meeting to do something as a work group, then it's very rarely productive. And if you're having a meeting just as a social meeting, for me, it's a lot more like I would much rather have a group meeting with friends. That isn't really a meeting.
Yeah.
But if you're meeting with people in the same industry, I'm not a big fan.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
probably interviewing someone who's a hostile witness, yeah? Okay.
Okay, so next, have you ever created some groups in your life? Maybe in university or some. So how do you create it, and how do you find the group members?
Cool. Yeah, sure. Everyone has to create groups, right?
Yeah.
Especially in design. So you have to assemble people. Frankly, I think a lot of the time the group is handed to you, right? So you're given this group that you have to work with, essentially, right? It might be a project manager and a copy editor and the designer, or it might be any, it depends on the structure of the project. So, a lot depends on the skill sets of the people involved versus the personalities of the people involved, right?
Yes.
So you might have to have people with a certain skill set, but you want the personalities to mesh
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to.
a lot
yeah.
of the time, and that's the problem.
Okay. So, when you use the app, what particular aspect of app will attract you to use it or choose it?
I think most apps, you have to have a sort of balance of versatility and simplicity. So it has to do a lot, but very, very easily. And that's really difficult, I think. When you're designing an app, usually the more features it has, the more complex it gets, and the more difficult to navigate, the more difficult to sort of access those features. The simpler it gets, the cleaner it gets. But then you don't have the features. So that's a balancing act I think most apps have to go through.
Okay. Simple. Go simple. Okay, so have you ever used Meetup app, or just searching it is also okay? Why and like this?
Well, I have not used it for its intended function. I've looked at it.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a formal experience of it, except to have looked through its interface.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about it.
So, do you think what kind of computers of Meetup? So.
I'll be honest, I'm a terrible interview for this because I'm not great on meetup apps, I'm not the guy, I'm not necessarily a guy who would use them, in which case it might be actually really good thing to hear that. Okay.
So, do you have some bad experience in group meeting? So what's the big challenges when you using the social meeting group app? So what's your concern?
Ooh. Group meetings, what are the challenges? Personality clash.
Personality, yeah, sure.
That's a big one. And that doesn't just mean people who are nasty or things like that. It also means different energy levels, right? There are some people who are really enthusiastic,
Yeah.
and some people who are really introverted,
Yeah,
and it's
soft.
hard to match that.
Yes.
So that's a big one, right? Because the people who are into it are far more aggressive, and the people who aren't are going to be far more
Yeah.
sort of even
Hard to
more shy than they would be. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that, and there's also essentially, communication's another one, right? Communicating things that can't be directly communicated in text, humor, subtext, all of that is
you mean,
difficult.
Add some tips for that person. It's better to. Oh, okay, that's good.
Also, basic things like remembering who the hell people are. You know, like especially like we're talking about meetups specifically, but in group meetings, you know, you might have met that person once and you don't remember what you should remember about them. That's a tough.
You mean what should we remember? Like to.
If the last time you met, they brought up personal details, what they're doing, who their family is.
Yeah. That's a
Right? Those are the
crazy
things
question.
people expect you to remember, and I have a terrible memory for that.
Okay, thank you. So I would get some feedback for the maybe Meetup's interface or something. So when you're browsing through Meetup, what's the problem, or do you see, or what's information do you expect to see?
Right. Well, let's look at a profile.
Okay.
Shall we? Can we? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Meetup.
All right. So let's look at the. Whoops. Whoa. If I look at the profile here, that's probably the most important things, right? And frankly, I'm seeing your essential interests that you want me to see, and I'm seeing your previous meetups, but I don't see a lot more than that. Like, I probably would want to know basic information about you, where you work, what you do, the things like that. So it could stand to be a lot more detailed in that regard. The groups themselves, that's fine. Calendaring works fine. That's what it's for. But in terms of like more specifics about you as a person, that would be great.
You mean user person?
Yes, any user. So really, right now it's all about the meetup and less about the person, which is what it should be maybe, but I'd still like to see more about the person, personally. And then, the meetups themselves, the information's fine, once we get inside the meetup, that's terrific. I can see everything I need to see, and people can post as they want to post, but the people themselves are what I'm a little more interested in. Who else is coming to this thing? Yeah. One of the reasons I would say that is because, generally speaking, I wouldn't like to go to a meetup and find out that it's populated entirely by 19-year-olds, right? So like I want people roughly who I can communicate with. Does that make sense?
I see, yeah. But there are a lot of, you don't need to communicate, just learning something maybe.
I know, but still.
Oh, okay.
That's maybe me, right? I've been out of school a long time, so
Okay.
it's more about, for me, a lot of learning comes from the other people.
Yeah, sure. So, what's the most weakness part for Meetup, you think?
Oh my goodness.
Like maybe research,
Well,
or category, or some workflow.
I don't think those are problems. In my experience, that's fairly easy to deal with. It's well tagged, right? Everything's well tagged. Everything's well categorized. So for what it does, I think it's fine. it's a little bit dry in terms of the visual design, right? There's not a lot of character to it. So for me, I tend to look for designs with a little more character, but for what it is, it's totally fine.
Yeah. If more characters looks more vivid or lively.
A little, yeah. Also, another weakness is the logo. It's terrible.
Logo?
Don't you think?
This logo?
Yeah, it looks like,
It's-
like it's accessible, it's populist, you know, it looks very approachable, but it's also messy.
Oh,
Right? It almost looks like someone, like when you look at the word, it looks like someone like wrote it in lipstick on a mirror. You know, that
Yeah,
doesn't
I see.
necessarily make, like, if that's about learning and meeting up, then it's a little not refined.
But I think the logo, like, is big part and like the small dots is like different people and connected.
I get it. But it also, like, if you look at the icon, doesn't it look like a blood splatter to you a little bit? Or jelly? Like,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I think you could express the idea of people coming together probably a little bit better and more, I don't know, organizedly.
Okay.
That's just me.
Okay. So for my redesign goal, I showed you I have 3 redesign goals. So do you have some opinions for my redesign goal?
Let's see.
Yeah. So first for security, and second I will add some share moment, like something. The 3 parties add more pictures and maybe.
I love the idea of getting more vivid. That's my favorite part of this. Legitimacy. I mean, that adds to giving me information about the people. So I'm totally for it. So I think those are great things to aim for. Sharing moments. So what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, sharing the group, the real, the situation for the maybe private account.
Yeah. Okay. I'm totally for that. I'm not sure exactly how much that would overlap with other apps functions. So that's something. Because these days, like, you know, every other app has an SMS function or something like that.
Yeah, so maybe it's more function, like if I add this one.
Well, if it's really specific to the meetup and specific to, like, if you can make it really relevant, then I think it works. The other 2, absolutely. Also, why are you using Internet Explorer as an icon to represent moment sharing? Like why that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's online, like share anywhere.
Oh, okay. But remember,
Maybe
you
this
know,
one you should
Internet
put it.
Explorer in web design is like ancient. Yeah.
Okay. But for the legitimate, I got an idea for I would people add some social number or password number, but someone don't want to add it. So someone give me a suggestion for meetup make category for school for social. So 2 parts. So if for school if school student make the groups, maybe it's better to communicate because school is a big population, and they need to study and share something. So maybe at school more personal, like AAU, just for focus on AAU student or another.
Got it.
Can put your student number. It's more people would love to. I don't know.
No,
how
I
to-
get you.
Yeah.
No, so you're legitimizing the users and making sure you're checking that they're like actual people, right? I mean, that's the idea. Love it. That's great. In fact, the more of that, the better. Have you done a survey and found out how many people actually would not be willing to give their personal information?
I don't know, but I ask my some international students. They don't want to put password number. They think it's not security. Maybe
Fair enough.
Someone
But
use
something.
it. Yeah.
You know, something that would lend some air of realness. You know.
Okay.
So I'm all in favor of that. I like knowing who I'm talking to, right? If I'm connecting with people or going to the same meetup as someone, how do I know who they are?
Yeah, I don't know who they are. This
Yeah.
is a big problem for me also. So what's the successful things in meetup?
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
when
it-
you say it.
I think it does what it's supposed to do really well.
Oh.
Like, you know, the basic functions, I think they work nicely. I think that the things you've pointed out are definitely things that could change.
So for the layout, do you think it works? Clear?
I think it's pretty intuitive.
Intuitive.
To be honest, just because it's so clean. I think if it were delineated more with sections, with color, things like that, it would be even better. Right now, it's got a basic level of hierarchy. I would call it a very basic app, right? No one's tried very hard with this. There's an old saying, like, if you're a designer and you're aiming for usable, that's like a chef aiming for edible, right? You're not aiming very high. So there's nothing beyond edible with this. There's nothing beyond usable. It's not delightful. It adds nothing to the experience. It's just a tool.
Yes, it's a tool. So okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That
No,
I
no.
got a lot of information. Thank
I'm
you.
glad.
Thank you.